Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure today to talk about esports and how brands have engaged from the Endemic perspective. First, we'd like to invite Daniel on stage. Daniel comes from HP. Please, everybody, round of applause. HP, of course, is a brand that's been supporting esports for quite some time at many different levels. Next, Jamie from Riot. And Yoshi from Dentsu. And Samir from Intel. All right, so we've heard a lot about how brands have engaged with this nascent and incredibly fast-growing industry that is esports. Would love to hear from y'all. We'll just go straight from Daniel in order. First, what caused you to start thinking about esports and ultimately make the move to begin investing?
So for us, can you guys hear me? Okay. So for us, esports was a natural progression from where we're doing our traditional marketing. If you think about esports and the gear that they use, so Omen basically is the kind of hardware that gamers use to play their games. In terms of the target audience, gaming and esports is a natural fit for us as a brand.
Great. Jamie, of course, Riot, different angle. Makes now, I don't know if y'all saw this, but League of Legends was just reported to peak at 8 million concurrent players in any given day. That makes it the largest, I think, video game in the world. How does that feel?
Slightly overwhelming.
And what was esports to Riot? Obviously, League of Legends was one of the early innovators in testing a variety of league formats, player engagement formats. What has that meant to Riot over the years?
It's absolutely congruent with Riot's kind of primary value, which is player experience first. And by putting the player experience at the very core of all of our product development, it's just naturally evolved and scaled over time.
Right. And Yoshi is part of Dentsu, representing many different brands trying to get into the world of esports. What caused Dentsu to really start digging in?
Well, yes. As an advertising agency, we needed to chase what's reaching out to the young audiences, of course. But more of my team, including myself, it gets involved with the esports team. It's everybody in this industry is really enjoying, enjoying the ride of making a new culture wave. And I enjoy that now too. So, I guess there's a business side too, but I guess this is a really, really a fun industry to be in, I think.
Samir, Intel, one of the most storied franchises in esports, the Intel Extreme Masters, in addition to all the wonderful things Intel does for gaming. What was the spark? What really started Intel's interest in the esports world?
I think it goes back to the fact that we make some really good CPUs for gamers. And we can proudly stand as an endemic brand. We make a gamer's craft a whole lot better. And if I lend that a little further, it's all about the community, right? I think when you look at the gaming audience from an endemic brand's perspective, Intel as a platform makes it better for them. So we want to give back to the gamers as many tournaments as possible, give them an option to win, and give the gamers a community platform to connect, right? I think that's where it comes back.
Great. So as y'all probably saw, hopefully, from the earlier presentations, it's a big world, it's a complex environment. Brands have opportunities to invest at individual player and creator level, to teams like Team Liquid and FaZe, to leagues like ESL, to leagues run by the game companies like Riot's LCS, and everything in between. Now, there's management groups, there's agencies that you can work with that are representing streamers and players. How did you decide which facet, which angle to tackle your brand efforts, your campaigns through? Any insights that you can provide to the folks in the audience as to how they might be able to start thinking about that. Samir, would love to kick it off with you.
Yeah, I think what Intel ended up doing, and if you look at the topics that we've spoken about, we bring AAA leagues into market, and that's the start point. And if you look at things that we've announced, it could be our $100 million deal with ESL over 3 years. It could be the rest of the things that we're doing in Korea and Taiwan. We bring IEM to life, we bring ESL 1 to life, but we take the league approach. We haven't started with influencers, we haven't started with teams. We literally create a platform where all games can land, all players can win, right? And we recently announced Intel World Open, and it's a similar process. So I think we have started with opening up our breadth, as many games and as many tournaments as possible, and we want to shop that around in quite a few countries, and that's the start of our journey.
Great. Yoshi?
Yep. For my side, I think the brands that are already interested in esports, they know. So they know where to target their audiences. But like on the other side, I have another mission to like attract other brands that are not interested in esports yet. But they're interested, but they don't know the details of esports. Let's say the rules of games. You know, they haven't played the game themselves. So for me to attract those brands, I need to have some general stories that can be reachable to general audiences who don't know the esports audiences. So if it's the athletes, the very, very top athletes that stands out in the market that everybody knows as a symbol, you know, that's something. Or maybe create like a story that's appealable to everyone. So school championship kind of a thing. Like we invested was the high school championship. It's easy to bring a story out of it, to create a brand story out of it. So things like that is what I'm chasing for those brands that are not interested in the esports yet.
How about you, Jamie?
We run the biggest esport league in the world, so I'm completely unbiased in this specific subject. My background was actually in media. So I came from a WPP media agency called Mindshare. And after a dozen years of doing that, we looked at the kind of scale and impact of esport. And we realized that actually it's an incredibly untapped opportunity from a brand perspective. And not just the endemic brands and the ones you'd ordinarily associate, but actually FMCGs and day-to-day brands. And so I wanted to come in and address that.
If I can flip this question for you, actually. So Riot has historically been incredibly careful and picky with what sponsors they do bring in. I'm sure you have many people knocking on the door, given not only the audience size, but also the brand safe nature of the content and all the cool things you do around the league itself. How do you pick? You know, you've done a MasterCard deal, you've done a Coca-Cola deal in the past, you recently announced a Nike deal in China. Those are all incredible global brands. How did you decide, and what really pushed y'all over that decision-making threshold to bring on those brands?
For the brands you wouldn't just assume, so brands like MasterCard. I think we've got a couple of examples of those, including Mercedes-Benz in China, who support the Pro League in China as the kind of primary sponsor of that. And if everybody gets their bingo cards ready, it comes down to authenticity and understanding what the core values are of that brand and marrying that with the core values of Riot as an organization and the values that we carry through the sport.
Great. How about you, Daniel?
So I think even though esports was a natural fit for us as a PC hardware brand, we still had to do our research and kind of insight study into dabbling into the space. So it wasn't like we just jumped in and not kind of knowing what we wanted to do. So we did a whole research and insights, and kind of the 4 things that came out of the research and insights that we did with the gamers was that they adopted a games first approach. And then second of all was the always-on mentality. Third one was the democratization of gaming, where it's accessible to everyone and there's no real barrier. And then the 4th piece of insights that we found out was that localization was key. And with that, we kind of crafted our flagship inaugural Omen Challenger series last year. So this year we're going to year 2. Later on, I'll share a little bit more of what that whole campaign was all about. But we really felt that we needed a robust set of surveys and research done before going into the space, even though you guys might think that it's a natural fit for a PC brand. And then, of course, coming out of that, we have the ROIs and the trackings in place to kind of measure the whole success of this campaign.
Great. And on that point, right, esports being a new industry, relatively new industry, being digital first, being on platforms like Twitch, which are new, right? If you think about Twitch, it's only really been around. It's actually only been around for 8 years as a platform that really kind of grew up with esports and vice versa. Measurements are still really, I think, being defined. So on that point, would love to hear what is one of your proudest moments in working in esports, a campaign that you particularly liked, going into it, how did you think about what you were going to measure, and what were the results?
So this is great. It kind of dovetails into the video, which if you guys can play the video, it's a short video.
Cue the video.
Playing on the land for the first time actually gave us a good opportunity to represent the country.
个人感觉的话，就是它电脑整体流畅度真的特别好，加上它显示器整个色彩的饱和度都特别好，我个人非常习惯，非常喜欢。最有印象的是那个它的耳机，然后它会有那种冰冰凉的感觉，就是戴了就是耳朵上面很舒服，不会出汗，这个真的做得蛮好，很贴心，很舒适。
Ini pengalaman pertamaku ada di turnamen sebesar ini dan pengalaman pertamaku juga ada di Bangkok, Thailand. Jadi ini merupakan pengalaman yang hebat aku bisa ada di sini.
Aku selama ini ya jadi caster segala macam gitu, malah yang mengomentari orang main jadi
rasanya
jadi orang yang main itu kayak berbeda banget dan bener-bener ya exciting banget lah.
Setup here is pretty amazing. We haven't played on these like stadiums and platforms before, so it's pretty surreal playing with a live crowd as well. It just makes it that much more exciting.
So just a quick shout out there to Intel, who also partnered with us to make this whole campaign possible. That was a 1.5 minute clip, but the whole duration of this campaign from planning to execution was about 9 months. So there was a lot of blood and sweat that went into this whole campaign. In terms of the kind of format that we did, we went in with an amateur format as well as influencer format. So if you guys are kind of familiar with the space, amateurs, no one really watches them. Influencers is where you really get eyeballs. So we kind of matched those two formats together, and so that gave birth to this whole campaign. This was a 11-country campaign, from China all the way down to New Zealand. So it was a massive campaign that we did last year, and for us, to be honest, it was a learning experience. We didn't know a lot going into it, but we definitely learned a lot more to make it better this year. In terms of the kind of results, the viewership we had for the live streams was 9 million. We had a 250% increase in social reach across the campaign, pre and post. And then at the event itself, so one thing particular about this event is that we held it in conjunction with Thailand's largest IT show, which is a buying show for people who want to buy IT hardware and peripherals and all those kind of things. So we didn't have this event in isolation of itself. We kind of had it paired next to an IT event. So in terms of measuring ROI and sales, it kind of had that added effect. So overall, for 3 days, we did 450 PC gaming units. 100 units were the actual units that they use on stage, which was later resold to a cyber cafe who kind of took up all 100 units. So that's some of the kind of measurements that we put in place for the whole campaign. Overall, I think the business at HP felt that it was a successful business. The first year, it was a really hard sell for them to convince them, even though we are a PC brand, why we want to do esports and why we want to do this tournament. There was a lot of case studies we had to put up, a lot of numbers that we had to put up. It was a hard sell, but we sold it. So year 2, it was a lot easier. It was not about why are we doing this, it's where are we doing it this year. So this year, season 2 will be in Indonesia, 1st to 3rd of November. and we're doing it larger and a bigger scale. So we're also partnering with Viacom and MTV to bring in the whole music element into esports. So there's definitely a convergence in gaming and music, and we're really bringing that in together this year with the partnership with MTV.
Great, thank you for that. Jamie, how about you? Favorite campaign that y'all worked on as part of LCS, and how did you communicate that value back to the brands?
I think my favorite one that we've worked on is currently running, actually, in Vietnam. So we worked with Coca-Cola to launch the new energy drink product, and it's really easy to think of the congruence between the needs of Coke and our audience. But what they did really well was our publishing partner in the region is a company called Garena, who own a whole load of cafes, and that allowed Coke to sample from the get-go. So we built in rewards where when consumers were purchasing the product, they would also get in-game items as well. The only media channel that was used was actually League of Legends Esports in Vietnam. And we just had the finals over the weekend to decide which of the Vietnamese teams is going to represent the country at the Worlds. It was an absolutely phenomenal campaign. Coke are absolutely stoked about it. We had a whole load of them down there at the event so they could see the energy. What they couldn't see was that during the finals, there were 290,000 peak concurrent users. So 290,000 people were tuning in at that point. And over the course of the 2-day finals, we had about 1.3 million people tuning in. So when you look at esport, quite often you actually see, work like HP have been doing, and you think, wow, that looks great. These 400 up to 1,000 people are having a really good time. What you don't realize is the scale and the size of the audience sitting at home tuning in.
Great. What about you, Yoshi? What about any brand campaign that you were particularly happy with?
Yeah, I'll quickly say two things. So it's difficult to provide a measurement to the clients nowadays still for me. So the value that I make is like the fact that we support esports, how can we leverage that to other communications? So one example is Japan Esports Union. It's a national federation that is in the future trying to aim to be a part of IOC. And Intel is doing the World Open along with the IOC, right? I mean, those kind of movement is huge. And anyways, so I put the sponsor for Japan Esports Union Federation. It's still small, but they can create the communication that they support the Japan national team of esports. That can expand their communication to broaden way, like support the whole esports of Japan culture. I mean, communication can be a lot of design from that fact. And another thing, we did the high school championship, and then we featured a high school kid whose mother never really admitted them playing esports, but he to show the parents how serious that is in, and with his school kids he proved it to his family and everyone. And those kind of story is really easy to catch to a broader generation. So those are the communication that I designed to spread. Yeah. So those two things. Yeah. So far.
Great. What about you, Samir?
We obviously love working with Daniel and team. The reason why I say that is, and we've got an Intel example, but the reason why we love working with HP is they bring esports into the grassroots, into the collegiate level, which Intel is unable to do on their own today. Right? So between the stories they tell with MTV, the things that they're trying to put together, that's incredibly important for us in this region. That helps. From an Intel, on our own perspective, IEM, Intel Extreme Masters is 15th year in a row. We've done 76 IEMs. It's obviously started off as a LAN party, and it's grown into something humongous. We fill in 20,000 people ticketed in Sydney, about 15 to 20 million unique. What's good with IEM Sydney is we also do a lot of sales activations, right? So we usually don't speak about what and how we activate, but it's important for us to show sales value out of esports. It's not just viewership and eyeballs. So this year we flew in roughly about 200 of our partners across Asia and Japan into Sydney. And when they walked in, it blew their mind on how engaged the audience were. And Aussie fans, I don't know if you've seen, they're the loudest. And they literally give you high decibel levels inside. So we'll roll the video and you'll get a sense of how huge IEM is for us. Right, so if you could just roll the IEM video.
We're in one of the best countries in the entire planet. We have the best fans here with us. And I need you to all stand up right now for the start of the Intel Extreme Masters Sydney 2019.
The team that's waited so long to finally win one. Still waiting till Pete Crowland spotted. He's got the CZ and he's gone. It's all on the JW. Smoked away and it's done finally.
Give it up for Team Liquid, your Intel Extreme Masters Sydney 2019 champion.
Ooh, thank you. Yeah, that's us.
If you haven't been to an event, I highly recommend you go. It really, regardless of game or place, I think esports has one of the most fanatical audiences out of any live event, sport or otherwise, out there. It's born of true passion and real aspiration. A 16-year-old won $3 million in New York City just a month ago at the Fortnite World Cup, changed his entire life. That's really happening in this industry. Okay, I'm going to skip. Well, toss it over to anyone who wants to offer it up as a learning. A campaign that didn't go well. What did you learn? What would you advise the audience today to think about that maybe you didn't think about going into that one? Any sage-like wisdom you can offer? I realize it's a terribly awkward question to talk about failure, but if anybody wants to toss something out.
We could do the failure bit, but we'll swap it as learnings. Just the flip side of IEM, before it entered Australia, and maybe the audience knows about this, we brought it for the first time in Korea. Now, we just thought that IEM, global property, Koreans would just love it. But that was not the case. Koreans get esports roughly about $6 a ticket, and we priced it at about 15 to 20. And we just realized that for a market that gets esports every now and then, an annual product like IEM was not the right fit. So it's incredibly important that you have great production value and you've got the right title, but you also need to sense what the market needs. And if they're getting esport content every weekend, they're not going to be waiting for a global title to just land. So that was really important for us to understand how local leagues and local activations really matter.
So, what about improvements? Y'all have all experienced what it's like to invest in esports. You understand what data is available. You have your own measurement rubric around it. What do you think needs to improve for more brands to be comfortable investing in the space from qualitative and quantitative, but I guess from the lens of data or information or insights that platforms and teams and leagues and game companies can provide? If you could wave a wand and change that today, what would you change?
Well, I would say the way that we measure is one thing, and also the authenticity. This is a hard thing because for us to go into the esports market, for outsider, we don't really know how the fan would react. If this campaign is something that's lovable from them, we need to fully understand the culture of esports to be 100% confident in throwing something in. Or otherwise, maybe it's a social media age. So somebody says, oh, this is not right, they don't understand. Then it's just all opposite effect. So some people, some of the brands are quite scared. People like Intel, HP, they have a good learning, so they know. Already gained the credibility, so they can go in. But it's hard for the new entrants to come in. Yeah, I need to learn more. Yeah. And like one of the mistake though is like we put the national brands onto the esports event, and all the business newspaper covered, oh, this new big brand is now supporting esports. It's a big hype, but like the actual esports fan was against it. Like there was a case like that. So I mean, I need to be really careful. I mean, to really know the culture, I think.
I can talk to it a little bit. So I think one of the biggest challenges that faces esport from a sponsorship and partnership perspective is actually self-pricing. We're talking values that are in the millions for sponsorships at this point, and I think it's incumbent on the industry to actually look at more formal measurement forms. So recently we just had Nielsen undertake a formal valuation of our sponsorship properties across Taiwan and across Vietnam. And we're looking at this globally as well. We've certainly done it in North America and Western Europe. And I think this is a step forward in the right direction that allows us to talk common value across what are more traditional sports sponsorships and start to move that money over.
All right, so let me just get the white elephant out of the room, right? So I don't think esports is for every brand. I mean, even for us, HP is an IT brand. We had some learnings, some failures, if you want to put it that way, coming into the whole esports space, right? And one big ones that I want to highlight was, so we had a global sponsorship for a big league, right, in the US that was a worldwide deal, which meant that it was supposed to work in all markets. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Beyond signing that sponsorship, a lot of activation and media needs to go into the local markets to make that relevant. And for us, it didn't happen in all markets. The activation and the relevancy of that game title and the whole deal, it didn't resonate in all markets. So for us, even though esports is the buzzword these days, you really need to understand what your brand stands for, your target audience, and how you really activate that locally in market, because that's key. I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We are still learning along the way. So you just really need to be very clear in your head while getting into it.
Great. And so this space is evolving quickly. Bigger brands, bigger traditional media companies are getting involved. Notably, Turner and ESPN have all established their own esports properties. Intel's partnering up to do an activation around the Olympics. What do y'all think's next? What's next for each of you in the coming years as you continue to engage and grow within esports? Samir?
For Intel, two things. We are trying to translate a global IP and take it much deeper into each market. So we're talking about language streams, going deeper into Indonesia, going deeper into Thailand. So it's not just about executing in one location, but if it's time relevant, how do we connect with communities across? So that's something that we're trying to do, right? Because you can't bring a AAA title into an arena in every city. So we're trying to see how we can connect multiple communities with the same IP and extract greater value as we just bring this into the rest of part of Asia.
Great. Yoshi?
No, for me, I think honestly, like I'm in a learning stage. I think I need to learn from everyone. And I'm an advertising agency. I need to be a support to a brand, support to a content holder, support to a platformer. And if I can't be that, then I'm out. So I just need to keep learning. And luckily, my company allows me to spend money, even as an agency. I'm just to invest into the market to create some space. That could be a win-win for someone. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything to say. I just need to learn and keep learning to be what's the best way to create win-win to this market. Thank you.
I can't talk much about the future.
What a tease.
So on October 16th will be the 10-year anniversary of League of Legends.
Congratulations.
And I would highly recommend people tune in.
So for HP, we look at the industry and where it's moving to, and we're predominantly a hardware company. But at the same time, with the new software services coming up with cloud gaming and all that, we kind of have to shift the way we do business. So we started off as a hardware company. We're moving into the direction of being a lifestyle gaming brand. So if you look at our portfolio of products, not only do we have laptops and desktops, we're moving into accessories of the headsets, the keyboards, mouse, and all that, and also apparel. Further beyond all of that, we're also getting into the software space, where we are offering, through our Omen Command Center, services such as coaching, rewards that really reside on an online space. So we're really seeing hardware as being a real commodity. In the future, not so soon, we probably see people gaming from non-gaming PCs, right? Because of the cloud gaming advancement. But that's future down the road. But we're aware of all of that, and we really will move as the wave kind of shifts.
Great. Well, with that, we're out of time. Daniel, Samir, Yoshi, sincere thank you all for supporting this industry. Jamie, thank you for creating an incredible platform through what you do, through your esports league, to offer a great representation for what we're trying to do as an industry. And thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.